Welcome to Anatomy of the Extraordinary, the podcast that unveils true, remarkable stories from the edges of human experience. I'm your host, and today we dive into another extraordinary journey.
September 26, 2022. We're in the dark, freezing waters of the Baltic Sea.
Right.
Just off the coast of this Danish island, Bornholm. And the time is exactly 02:03 a.m.
Pitch black.
Exactly. On the surface, the water's literally calm. But, 80 meters below, something catastrophic is happening.
Yeah.
At that precise minute, seismometers across Denmark, Sweden, and Germany suddenly register this massive tremor. And then 17 hours later at 19.03, a second, even larger series of blasts just violently rips through the seabed.
Yeah, and the readings, they were just undeniable. A magnitude 2.3 on the Richter scale.
Which is huge.
Right, that is not a minor seismic anomaly. That is the signature of a massive kinetic event.
And this presents really one of the most baffling paradoxes in modern history. The targets of those blasts were the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines.
Yeah.
These structures were marvels of industrial engineering, heavily armored, sitting at the bottom of what is basically a maritime panopticon.
Oh, totally. The Baltic Sea it's watched by coastal radars, submarine sonars, naval patrols.
Military satellites.
Exactly. Yet somehow a perpetrator managed to completely cripple billions of dollars of international energy architecture. And nobody noticed a thing until the ocean surface literally began boiling with this kilometer-wide geyser of methane gas.
It's just wild. And, welcome to today's deep dive into the source material. We're going to unpack all of this.
Yeah.
Because it forces a complete recalculation of how we view global security.
It really does. We are so accustomed to visual confirmation, right? Like a missile strike or troop movement.
Right, something you can see on a drone feed.
Exactly. But subsea infrastructure operates in this investigative black box. The evidence is buried under millions of tons of seawater.
Yeah, and we have a massive stack of source material in front of us today to try and illuminate that black box. We're pulling from forensic analyses, unsealed court records, explosive international intelligence leaks, and all these complex European legal frameworks extending right up into mid-2026.
And we should probably put a quick disclaimer here, right? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because we are navigating deeply contested geopolitical terrain today. It involves active military conflicts and highly sensitive intelligence.
Right.
So our role today for you, the listener, isn't to play judge. We are not taking sides. We are just laying out the facts, the competing theories, and the legal battles exactly as the international courts and intelligence agencies have documented them in our sources.
Yeah, we're just following the paper trail. Right. And I think the architecture of the target itself is probably the best place to start, because understanding how the vault was broken really requires understanding the vault.
The vault being the pipeline.
Right. The Nord Stream system was engineered with just extreme durability in mind. Nord Stream 1 and 2 combined consisted of roughly 100,000 individual steel pipes.
Wow.
Yeah, forming an artery that's 1,222 kilometers long.
And the physical mass is staggering. I was looking at the specs. The steel walls were up to 41 millimeters thick.
Yeah. And to ensure they stayed anchored to the seabed and, could withstand an impact from something like a dragging ship's anchor, that steel was encased in a layer of high-density concrete.
Right.
Up to 110 millimeters thick. A single segment of this pipe weighed 24 tons.
It's massive. But, the most critical factor regarding the blast physics isn't just the steel and the concrete.
Oh.
It's what was inside.
Yeah.
Even though political standoffs meant neither pipeline was actively pumping commercial gas to European consumers at that moment, they were fully pressurized.
Right, with technical gas.
Exactly. To maintain structural integrity against the crushing weight of the ocean.
We're talking up to 300 million cubic meters of gas sitting inside Nord Stream 2 alone.
Maintain at a pressure exceeding 100 bar.
That's insane.
Yeah. When you consider that standard atmospheric pressure is about 1 bar, you realize that the pipeline is essentially a coiled spring.
Just waiting to snap.
The steel is holding back an immense amount of potential energy.
So when a breach occurs, the pipe doesn't just, passively leak.
No, not at all.
It violently erupts. The internal pressure becomes a secondary explosive mechanism.
Yeah, and when investigators finally got drones down to the seabed, the forensics were just apocalyptic.
I can imagine.
They found technogenic craters 3 to 5 meters deep. Massive 24-ton chunks of concrete-coated steel were found scattered up to 250 meters away across the ocean floor.
Just thrown like toys.
Exactly. At least 50 meters of the pipeline had simply vanished from its trench. Obliterated.
And the initial assessment from the German Federal Prosecutor's Office estimated that it would take an explosive payload equivalent to like 700 kilograms of TNT to achieve that level of total incapacitation.
Right, 700 kilograms.
Wait, 700 kilograms. I mean, if we are talking about a payload nearly weighing a metric ton, that completely eliminates the idea of a small rogue operation, right?
I think so, yeah.
You need heavy military logistics to move and deploy that much bulk explosive underwater.
And that was the initial assumption. But military demolitions experts analyzing the underwater drone footage noticed something highly specific about the fracture points.
Okay, what did they see?
The footage from the southernmost blast site on Nord Stream 2 revealed an incredibly clean cut through the steel, accompanied by a small, distinct indentation. And that signature does not match the brute force trauma of 700 kilograms of bulk TNT. It matches the distinct physics of a shaped charge.
Right. Using military-grade explosives like HMX or RDX.
Precisely. A shaped charge relies on the Monroe effect.
Remind me how that works.
So the explosive material is molded around a conical metal liner. When it detonates, the shear force collapses the cone, turning the metal into a superheated hypovelocity jet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it pushes through solid steel like a high-pressure water washer cutting through mud.
So it focuses all that destructive energy into a single armor-piercing point.
Which means the perpetrators wouldn't need a metric ton of explosives. Experts calculated that highly trained divers could achieve those clean cuts using relatively small charges.
How small?
Around 14 to 27 kilograms of HMX per charge.
That is a massive difference.
Right. The shaped charge slices the steel, and then that 100 bar of internal gas pressure does the rest. It tears the pipeline apart and blows out the crater.
Wow. Okay, so that dramatically shifts the profile of the perpetrator? We are no longer looking exclusively for a massive naval destroyer.
No.
We are suddenly looking for a highly sophisticated, asymmetrical strike team. Which brings us right to the Andromeda theory.
Yeah, the Andromeda. So the Andromeda is a 15-meter Bavaria Cruiser 50 sailing yacht.
Pretty standard boat.
Very standard. In early September 2022, this vessel was rented from a marina in Rostock, Germany. And the rental was processed through a Polish-registered shell company called Fifira Lua.
Which investigators allege was quietly funded by a Ukrainian entrepreneur.
Right. And according to the German Federal Criminal Police, a crew of 5 men and 1 woman used forged identity documents to charter this yacht.
Okay.
Between September 6 and September 23, they sailed from Rostock to Vik off Rügen and then navigated out toward Christiansand.
Which is this tiny Danish outpost hovering directly over the pipelines.
Exactly. And this isn't just a geographical coincidence. When investigators searched the cabin of the Andromeda, they found residue of HMX on a wooden table.
Wow. The presence of military-grade oxygen inside a rented civilian sailboat. That is a massive forensic anchor for the German investigation.
It's the smoking gun, basically.
But before the Andromeda became the focal point, the intelligence community was paralyzed by 2 highly compelling alternative theories. We should probably cover those.
We should. The first being the Russian naval theory.
Right, because just days before the blasts, the Danish Defense Command tracked 6 Russian naval vessels operating near Bornholm.
With their transponders turned off.
Which is always suspicious.
Very. And the most notable vessel in that group was the SS-750. It's a specialized salvage ship designed to launch the AS-26 Priz-class mini-submarine.
Okay, so a mini-sub.
Yeah.
Right.
The AS-26 is engineered precisely for deep-water operations and could easily navigate an 80-meter depth.
The obvious strategic question, though, is why Russia would sabotage a pipeline they spent billions of dollars constructing, right? I mean, the prevailing theory in intelligence circles was that it could be a strategic false flag operation tied to international contracts.
How so?
Well, Russia had halted gas deliveries to Europe, citing maintenance issues. But Gazprom was staring down massive financial penalties for failing to meet their delivery obligations.
Right. So sabotaging the pipeline could theoretically allow them to declare force majeure?
Exactly. An unforeseen, catastrophic event, thereby voiding those contracts legally.
That makes sense financially.
However, despite the suspicious ship movements, Western intelligence agencies, including the CIA, later signaled that they had found no definitive proof linking the Russian state to the actual explosions.
Right, which leaves a vacuum, and that's the vacuum that investigative journalist Seymour Hersh attempted to fill.
Oh, yes?
Hersh published a report claiming the sabotage was a joint operation between the United States Navy and Norway.
His theory centered on the Baltic Sea 2022 NATO maritime exercises, right?
Yeah, he alleged that U.S. divers used the cover of those war games to plant the explosives months in advance.
And he heavily cited a public statement made by U.S. President Joe Biden in February 2022, weeks before the invasion of Ukraine.
Right, the famous quote.
Biden stated bluntly that if Russian tanks cross the border, quote, there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
Yeah. But the White House aggressively dismissed Hersh's report as complete fiction.
And independent open-source analysts found significant discrepancies in the ship movements his anonymous source described.
It did.
But, let's step back and look at the logistics of the Andromeda theory for a second, because I have to push back here.
Okay, go for it.
A 15-meter civilian sailboat bobbing in the freezing Baltic currents, a crew of 6, diving to 80 meters, without a hyperbaric decompression chamber, without heavy-lift naval cranes, all while avoiding the sonar nets of 3 different NATO countries. I mean, it completely strains credulity. It just sounds like a James Bond movie.
It is an immense logistical leap. I won't argue with that. And several senior naval commanders initially dismissed the yacht theory as practically impossible for that exact reason.
It just sounds too far-fetched.
But the investigation went further. Specialized diving simulations were commissioned to test the precise parameters of an 80-meter sabotage dive from a small vessel.
Oh, really? What did the simulations reveal?
They confirmed it is technically possible, though it skirts the absolute edge of human endurance.
I mean, diving that deep is no joke.
Not at all. At 80 meters, breathing compressed air is a death sentence. Nitrogen becomes highly narcotic, impairing cognitive function, and oxygen becomes toxic to the central nervous system.
So they couldn't just use standard scuba gear?
No. The divers would have had to use specialized mixed gases, specifically heliox.
Replacing the nitrogen with helium.
Exactly. Heliox mitigates the toxicity and narcosis, but helium conducts heat away from the body incredibly fast.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and in the freezing waters of the Baltic, the diver's core temperature would plummet rapidly. Plus, they would also need to lower the 20-kilogram shaped charges by hand using inflatable lift bags.
Just to completely bypass the need for a naval crane.
Right. But the ascent is the real bottleneck. You can't just swim back to the surface from 80 meters.
Because of the bends.
Exactly. Without a decompression chamber on the yacht, they would have to hang on a line in the freezing water for hours to let the inert gases safely off-gas from their tissues.
Hours. In that water.
Yes, and if a storm kicks up or a patrol boat approaches and they have to surface quickly, their blood would essentially boil with gas bubbles.
That is horrifying.
The risk of fatal decompression sickness would be astronomical. It implies a team operating with a profound acceptance of their own mortality.
A suicide mission almost.
Almost, but it also highlights the terrifying elegance of hybrid warfare.
What do you mean?
Well, a billion-dollar surveillance net is designed to catch a Russian submarine. It is not designed to scrutinize a mid-sized sailboat chartered by tourists.
Oh, wait.
The Andromeda was the ultimate asymmetrical vehicle precisely because it was unremarkable.
That is chilling. So if a highly trained, privately funded team managed to pull off this logistical nightmare, we have to follow the trail out of the water and into the geopolitical tinderbox that created them.
We do.
Because the Nord Stream pipelines were never just infrastructure. From their inception, they were weaponized geography.
Very true. The project's origins trace back to 2005. It was spearheaded by German Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder and Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Right.
And by routing the pipeline straight through the Baltic Sea from Vyborg to Lubmin, they intentionally bypassed Eastern Europe.
Entirely. Ukraine and Poland didn't just lose billions in transit fees, they lost their geopolitical shield.
Exactly.
I mean, as long as Russian gas flowed through their territory, Russia couldn't easily shut off their energy without also cutting off Germany. Nord Stream severed that dependency.
Yeah, and to Chancellor Angela Merkel, who championed Nord Stream 2 later on, it was cheap energy for the German industrial machine.
But to Washington, Warsaw, and Kyiv, it was an existential threat.
Which is the exact environment that birthed what intelligence sources refer to as the Diameter Project.
The Diameter Project.
Yeah. According to investigative reports from the Wall Street Journal and Der Spiegel, the sabotage plot did not originate in a classified military bunker.
Didn't.
No. It allegedly started in the spring of 2022 in a bar in the Podil district of Kiev.
Wait, in a bar? The country is facing total annihilation, and a group of senior military officers and private businessmen allegedly begin brainstorming asymmetric warfare over drinks.
That's what the reports claim. They decide the pipeline is the ultimate target, and they don't use state funds. The operation is allegedly crowdsourced by wealthy patriots, costing roughly $300,000.
Wow, which gives the state plausible deniability.
Precisely. But the intelligence trail reveals a staggering failure to keep the operation compartmentalized.
People talked.
They always do. By June 2022, the Dutch Military Intelligence Service, the MIVD, intercepted communications detailing the plot. Yeah. They learned that a dive team, allegedly operating under the supervision of Ukraine's then commander-in-chief, General Valery Zaluzhny, was preparing to rent a yacht.
So the Dutch immediately hand this over to the CIA.
Right.
And then the CIA sends a red alert to German intelligence, the BND, and reportedly goes straight to the top in Kyiv, demanding that President Volodymyr Zelensky abort the mission immediately.
And the reports claim Zelensky complied with the CIA and ordered the operation halted.
Okay, but the pipeline still blew up.
Right, because the narrative alleges that General Zaluzhny allowed the operation to proceed anyway, though it is crucial to note here that General Zaluzhny has vehemently, publicly denied any involvement.
Yes.
He called the entire narrative a, quote, mere provocation.
But the internal leaks claim that when Zelensky later confronted the military command, he was told the dive team was like a torpedo.
A torpedo.
Yeah, I think about this like deploying a rogue algorithm into the high-frequency trading market. Once you execute the code and it's out in the wild, you can't just press undo.
That's a great analogy.
The team was allegedly already dispatched, operating in total radio silence to maintain operational security. Once that torpedo is in the water, it cannot be recalled.
And this presents a profound strategic dilemma for Western intelligence in the aftermath of the explosion.
Oh, a massive dilemma.
Right. Because if the West investigates aggressively and publicly confirms that a NATO ally's critical infrastructure was destroyed by the very nation they are arming and funding, the geopolitical shockwave could fracture the alliance permanently.
I mean, how does the German chancellor stand in front of his electorate and justify sending billions of euros and Leopard tanks to Kyiv if the public believes Kyiv's authorized the freezing of German homes and the destruction of their primary energy artery?
They can't.
Political calculus demanded silence.
Which explains the highly secretive, compartmentalized nature of the investigations. Everyone kept their cards close to their chest.
But that silence couldn't hold forever.
No.
By early 2024, the international investigative facade began to crack under the weight of European legal frameworks.
Yeah, it started in February 2024 when Sweden and Denmark abruptly closed their official investigations.
Which was shocking. They essentially walked away from the biggest act of industrial sabotage in modern history.
They did, but they hit a strict jurisdictional wall.
Explain that.
So the Swedish Security Service concluded beyond a doubt that gross sabotage had occurred.
Right.
However, the blasts happened in their exclusive economic zone, not their territorial waters. And because no Swedish citizens were implicated and the attack was not aimed directly at Swedish national security, they legally lacked jurisdiction to prosecute.
And Denmark arrived at a similar conclusion.
Exactly.
So they basically box up all their evidence, the underwater soil samples, the HMX residue, the mangled steel, and they hand it to Germany.
Bag, you're it.
Exactly. Germany becomes the sole inheritor of this geopolitical nightmare, and the German Federal Prosecutor General refused to let it go.
They really dug in.
They follow the Andromeda Trail to Ukrainian nationals living across the European Union. And this kicks off a massive stress test of the European arrest warrant system in 2025 and 2026.
Yes. The European arrest warrant, or EAW, is designed to ensure seamless extradition between EU member states.
In theory.
Right, in theory. But the Nord Stream warrants expose deep ideological rifts.
For sure.
In August 2025, Italian police arrested a 46-year-old man named Serhiy K., who was an alleged veteran of the Ukrainian security service.
And where did they get him?
He was just vacationing in San Clemente.
Unbelievable. So Germany requested his immediate extradition, claiming he coordinated the dive team.
Yeah.
And Serhiy K's legal defense was fascinating.
It really was.
He didn't just claim mistaken identity. His lawyers invoked a doctrine called functional immunity.
Yeah, functional immunity. This argues that state officials cannot be prosecuted in foreign domestic courts for acts carried out in their official capacity.
Right.
So his defense effectively stated that if he did participate, it was a legitimate military operation conducted during an ongoing armed conflict, placing it outside the jurisdiction of German criminal law.
Basically saying, I'm a soldier fighting a war, not a criminal breaking a window.
Exactly. But the Italian Supreme Court rejected that defense. They confirmed the EAW and extradited Serhiy K to Germany in November 2025.
Okay, so that's Italy. Now contrast that smooth procedural cooperation with what happened in Poland a month later.
Oh, it is a stunning divergence.
Yeah.
In September 2025, Poland detained another suspect, a diving instructor named Volodymyr Z.
And again, Germany issued the EAW.
But Poland outright refused to comply.
And the Polish judge, Dariusz Dubowski, didn't rely on a technicality either. He issued a ruling that fundamentally challenged the definition of the crime itself.
He did.
He ruled that the sabotage was a justified action and legally classified it as a diversionary act undertaken in defense against an aggressor's infrastructure.
Right. And you have to understand, the EAW system relies heavily on the principle of double criminality.
Meaning the act must be considered a crime in both the requesting and the holding state.
Yes. So by declaring the sabotage a justified act of war rather than a criminal offense, Poland basically broke the foundational trust of the EAW framework.
It's a huge crack in the EU legal system.
And the Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, even publicly stated that the patrons of Nord Stream should, quote, apologize and keep quiet.
Wow. Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, he didn't hold back. And Volodymyr Z was subsequently released.
So this leaves Serhiy K in a German prison while his alleged accomplice walks free in Poland.
Yep.
And then in January 2026, the German Federal Court of Justice, the BGH, had to step in and establish a definitive legal boundary.
The BGH ruling is a watershed moment in international law.
Because they claim jurisdiction.
Right. The court established clear territorial jurisdiction, arguing that while the explosions happened at sea, the result of the offense, which is the severing of the gas supply and the destruction of the integrated network, occurred on German soil at the Lubmin receiving terminal.
Ah, clever.
Yeah.
And they thoroughly dismantled the combatant privilege defense. They ruled that the pipelines were primarily civilian infrastructure.
Right.
Therefore, destroying them in a way that endangers German sovereignty is a domestic criminal offense, not a protected act of war.
And this brings us to the intellectual core of the entire conflict, the legal war-sustaining debate.
This part is fascinating.
It really is. The Lieber Institute at West Point published a comprehensive analysis exploring the central question. Under the laws of armed conflict, was Nord Stream a legitimate military target?
Right. And to understand this, you have to look at the Geneva Conventions, specifically Additional Protocol I, Article 52, Paragraph 2.
Yeah.
This deals with the principle of distinction, which basically means you cannot just bomb anything you want. You must distinguish between civilian objects and military objectives.
And a military objective is narrowly defined as an object that, by its nature, location, purpose, or use, makes an effective contribution to military action.
And whose destruction offers a definite military advantage.
Exactly. So the debate hinges on whether a commercial gas pipeline owned by Gazprom effectively contributes to Russian military action.
And this is where the United States military doctrine breaks away from the rest of the world.
They do.
The U.S. Department of Defense holds a minority interpretation that includes war-sustaining objects as legitimate targets.
Yes. And the historical precedent often cited here is the American Civil War.
Right, the cotton.
Yeah. In the 1860s, Union forces systematically burned Confederate raw cotton. Now, cotton wasn't a weapon, but the Confederacy sold it to Europe to finance the purchase of rifles and artillery.
So by destroying the cotton, the Union destroyed the economic engine of the Confederate military.
Exactly. Following that logic, the U.S. war-sustaining doctrine suggests that because Nord Stream generated billions of dollars in state revenue that Russia directly used to fund its armed forces, the pipeline was essentially the modern equivalent of Confederate cotton.
Which makes logical sense on the surface.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we accept that destroying a pipeline is legal simply because the revenue funds an army, the principle of distinction collapses entirely.
It really does.
Does that mean a belligerent can legally bomb a civilian bank that processes the state's taxes? Can they sink civilian oil tankers? Can they strike the tax collection offices in the capital city?
Right. Where does it end?
It creates a terrifyingly subjective battlefield.
And that's why the overwhelming majority of the international legal community vehemently rejects this interpretation.
Including the frameworks established by the San Remo Manual on Armed Conflicts at Sea.
Yes. As the Lieber Institute concluded, if expanding the definition of a military objective renders civilian protections meaningless, that interpretation cannot be legally sound. Under majority international law, Nord Stream was a civilian object. Its destruction crosses the line from asymmetric warfare into a potential international war crime.
And while the courts and military academics debate the philosophy of distinction, the real-world consequences have already reshaped the European continent.
Oh, utterly.
The economic and ecological fallout has been staggering.
Yeah. Prior to the blasts, Russia supplied roughly 45% of the European Union's natural gas.
Almost half.
Yes. The sudden, permanent severing of that supply forced an immediate and painful paradigm shift. Germany had to pivot entirely to liquefied natural gas, or LNG, relying on massive shipments from the United States and Qatar.
And the financial shock was brutal. In the subsequent winters, German household heating costs spiked by 82%.
82%. People couldn't afford to heat their homes.
And to prevent a total collapse of its manufacturing sector, the German government was forced to inject over $60 billion annually in electricity subsidies just to stabilize the market.
It's just an astronomical amount of money.
The era of cheap, reliable pipeline gas that built modern German industry was completely eradicated.
But beyond the economics, the ecological damage remains difficult to fully quantify.
Yeah, the methane.
Right. The rupturing of the highly pressurized pipes caused the largest single human-caused release of methane in recorded history.
And methane traps heat in the atmosphere at a rate vastly higher than carbon dioxide in the short term. Estimates suggest the release was equivalent to up to 400,000 tons of CO2.
Wow.
Yeah, that single event equaled the entire annual methane emissions of a country the size of Sweden.
And the physical devastation on the seabed was equally severe. The blast wave killed marine life within a 4-kilometer radius.
Just wiped it out.
But more dangerously, it violently churned up 250,000 tons of sediment.
And why is that sediment dangerous?
Because the Baltic Sea floor around Bornholm is a known dumping ground for conventional and chemical munitions from World War II.
Oh, man.
The explosions resuspended highly toxic agents like lead and tributyl back into the water column, poisoning the local ecosystem.
It's just a compounding disaster. And, this saga is far from over.
Not even close.
As of April 2026, a massive legal threat is looming. Russia is not letting this go. They have formally lodged pretrial claims against Germany, Denmark, Sweden, and Switzerland.
Yeah, and Moscow's legal strategy here bypasses the laws of armed conflict entirely.
What are they arguing?
They are accusing these nations of violating the 1997 International Convention for the Suppression of Terrorist Bombings.
So terrorism, not war.
Right. Russia claims that Western nations are deliberately stonewalling their investigations and refusing to share evidence in order to shield Ukraine from accountability.
Wow.
And they are threatening to escalate the dispute to the International Court of Justice.
They're demanding an impartial international tribunal, which is a move Western governments view as a blatant attempt to politicize the ongoing German criminal trials and fracture NATO solidarity on a global stage.
Exactly.
I mean, we are looking at a legal war that will likely take a decade to resolve.
Minimum. And the legacy of the Nord Stream sabotage extends far beyond the Baltic Sea. It fundamentally shattered the illusion of subsea security.
It really did.
The modern world, our global financial markets, our power grids, the internet infrastructure carrying this very audio you're listening to, is entirely dependent on a vast, invisible network of subsea cables and pipelines.
And the Andromeda theory proved a terrifying concept. You don't need a multi-billion-dollar nuclear submarine fleet to paralyze a continent.
No, you don't.
A small team of divers operating from a rented civilian yacht with a few kilograms of shaped charges can bypass the most sophisticated surveillance networks on Earth and plunge an entire region into an energy crisis overnight.
It exposed an asymmetric vulnerability that is nearly impossible to defend against. Navies are now scrambling to establish subsea resilience task forces because the blueprint for catastrophic deniable infrastructure sabotage has been written and proven effective.
Right. The vault we talked about at the beginning wasn't just broken. The robbers proved that the vault doors were made of paper. They dismantled the very concept of secure, critical infrastructure.
And in doing so, they forced the international community to grapple with the increasingly blurred lines of modern conflict.
Absolutely. Because we are operating in an era where the definition of an act of national defense versus an act of international terrorism depends entirely on your geopolitical coordinates.
It really does.
A heroic diversionary act in Warsaw is a constitutional crisis in Berlin and a war crime in Moscow.
Yeah.
So the next time you walk into your home and turn up the thermostat or flip a light switch, take a moment to consider the invisible underwater architecture thousands of miles away that makes that comfort possible. And more importantly, ask yourself, who might secretly consider it a legitimate target of war tomorrow?
Thank you for joining us on this adventure. Until next time, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it and keep seeking the extraordinary.